Okay, welcome back to video 521, the supplemental video. All right. Now, when I first stamped this out in the video, if you've watched it or not, this stamp right there, the Seaside Cove, stamped out really lightly, and by the time I added on all those tones, it was practically invisible. So I went and decided to not be lazy, and I really scrubbed my stamp off. There had been probably years of kind of caked on, dried ink on here, and it was kind of acting as a little bit of a resist to the ink, so when I was inking it up, I don't think I was getting a lot of ink on the surface here, and of course this is a really large stamp with a ton of surface area. So after I scrubbed it off, as you can do with, any stamps in this type of process here, if it didn't stamp out, later on, and I didn't need any kind of positioner at all because I could barely see it on here. All I did was I just inked it up again, dye-based ink, and I just re-stamped it over the top of this so we have all these different forms and dimensions on here, okay? So that was practically non-existent after I finished that video. And what I've done is, with the stylus tools, I've gone in underneath the waves here, where there are shadows in the waves, and I have added some ink like that onto the scene, okay, into those darker areas. So you stamp it, and then you kind of enhance the shadows with, in this case, black ink. It was dark enough in this area here where I can use black. If it was fairly light, I might use blue or something like that sort, being that it's a blue color scheme. But it's dark enough to where I can go with some black like that. You can see I'm adding some shadows underneath there to bring out the waveforms. Now, you enhance the shadows, and then you do the same for the highlights. So this is just a cotton swab. And I'm going to put some ink on there, but I'm going to remove a great deal of it, okay? And now what we'll do, let's see if I can zoom in here, is what I'm going to do is we darken the shadows and we'll lighten some of the lighter areas. Now this area, just in general, is not a light area. It's fairly dark. But I can lighten up some of these waves just with the use of some of this pigment ink. We don't want a big blob of it, okay? We want a very translucent application of this, meaning, translucent meaning very thin and see-through, okay? So you want a little bit of opacity, but you do want that those colors to show through. Pure white right in these areas would look really weird, being that there's not a lot of light hitting that area because it's so dark. It's kind of in the shadows, right? So you can see the tops of those crests of those waves starting to appear more. And see, I'm just kind of going with the same inking. I just applied very little, or I applied ink on here, but then I removed quite a bit of it before I started applying it. So it takes quite a few taps for really anything to show at all. And that's what you want. You get a lot of control over your application method if you're not applying very much with each tap. You have to go through multiple taps for it to even show up. And again, that gives you a lot of control over the amount that you apply. And if you apply too much on, glossy cardstock with standard pigment inks, you can always remove it. Always kind of dab it off with my finger. You can take it off with a, paper towel or napkin, whatever, rag. Alright, so it's kind of nice getting this variation in here again. It adds to the drama a little bit, or maybe not a little bit, but quite a bit. Let's get a little bit on these crashing waves here in the foreground. The foreground of the water, at least. This is the foreground down here, but kind of the closest part of the wave. Adding this little bit of a kind of a frosted top of these waves, the cresting waves. gives you a little bit of that reflective lighting coming from the moonlight. So you have light source and reflected light down here. That's what it's supposed to represent, at least. Alright, so we have that. Okay. It's kind of a soft application of highlighting. Let's try a little bit of the white paint pen highlighting. You can use a gel pen or something like that. When you're going over pigment ink, though, sometimes the gel pens are a little bit tricky because it is a roller ball, and sometimes you're rolling. Even though I just use it in kind of a dot pattern, but sometimes it goes up into the roller ball. Where the paint pen is more of a straight application of media. Okay, let's see here. Now, again, we want this pretty subtle, okay? You know, because there's not a lot of light down here, so I don't want too much light being reflected. Alright, so just that little bit like that. This little specular light reflecting off of the surface. A lot more three-dimensional now in that given space. I'd say it's a lot more three-dimensional, but it's kind of that way in a very subtle way as well. But look how rich that area is. So anyways, that was really bothering me. I had to get that Seaside Cove really stamped out again. I had to go in and kind of scrub that off. It just took a minute. I just even used my my splatter painting toothbrush here. You can see where it kind of got stained now too. But I just took this and I just really scrubbed this off. This toothbrush is a really great tool for cleaning stamps. Kind of forget about that sometimes, but anyway, we have a much kind of more complete, maybe, scene now with that area a little bit more defined. It's still in the darkness now, but we get that kind of rich surface, you know, within a fairly significant area within the scene. So anyway, that is complete now. So thanks for watching, and hope you enjoy the scene, and hope you enjoy the scene even more if you've watched the previous videos on the overall construction of this composition.